Speedway Tavern. Speedway Tavern. Speedway Tavern. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Enjoy your stay. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. What's the news today? Have a drink, have your say. All opinions here today. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Enjoy your stay. Webby, GA, and Matt are here today. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Come and have your say.
Well, good evening and welcome everybody to the Speedway Tavern. Mike's not here yet, but he is, I'm assured he's on his way. In the studio this evening we've got Matt Book and our special guest, James Shane.
Good evening.
See how that, brother.
Thanks for having me back on, guys.
How you doing, gentlemen?
Not too bad.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well then, Matt, I think you better kick the show off while I get sharing the stream and what so forth.
Well, it's been a few months since we last caught up, isn't it, James? And obviously we're still in a situation where, perhaps not surprisingly, the British season was cancelled. So are we keeping busy at the moment?
Yeah, it's been, busy as I can be. I've had the 2 rounds of the Grand Prix, long track Grand Prix, which went, better than I could have hoped for, really, given the circumstances and the little racing I have been doing. And, I've got myself a nice little job and keeping relatively busy. So still annoying the girlfriend as much as normal. So I'm doing something right.
It's part and parcel. It's the job. Keep her on her toes.
Absolutely. I mean, it wasn't really as much of a surprise. I don't think it was really a surprise in the end that the decision was made. And we are, as I say, living in very uncertain times. And I think we were talking before we went live. There's, you begin to wonder now about 2021 season whether that's going to certainly start on time.
Yeah, it's hard times, really is. I feel for everyone. It's been. It's been mentally tough for a lot of people having to be shut home for so long, and then, we're allowed back out, and all of a sudden we're not, and everything's changing so quickly. It's quite hard to even, plan for next year. I've started planning for next year, but also on the side note, is there going to be a next year? So it's tough to decide what to do and how to do it, but you just got to listen to what everyone's saying, and the health of the whole country comes first, really, at the end of the day.
I mean, I guess really there's nothing really to talk about, but I want to imagine that you're still keeping in touch with the guys at Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, I've raced with Chris and Thomas H a couple of times this year with the long track stuff. So, keep in touch every now and again. Lawrence drops us all a message, make sure we're still, out of trouble and, doing all right. So we have a catch up every now and again, but there's not really a lot to talk about with any of the lads. No one's really riding. No one's really doing anything. We've almost, turn to normal people with normal jobs, and that's it. I mean, every now and again, someone pops up with a random picture or a stupid, some stupid comment, but that's about as far as it goes, really.
I mean, obviously, we have seen a little bit of Speedway. Of course, the British final, staged behind closed doors. It initially was going to be at Ipswich, of course, but moved to Bellevue because of the forecast. I'm not sure whether you saw that meeting at Bellevue, but it was obviously very, very treacherous conditions. And cynic would say that we would have had to play Waltzing Matilda instead of God Save the Queen at the end of the
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of controversy behind the whole British final thing with the riders that were in it and the whole where it was going and stuff like that. But it's a good thing that they ran the meeting. There has been Speedway in this country, so hopefully no one's forgotten about the sport and found something better to do. So you can really hope. I mean, I'm glad I wasn't riding that meeting. It didn't look the funnest of conditions to ride in, but it's one of them things. They wanted to run the meeting and they did their best to run it. Whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, I'm on the fence about it. But yeah, it was good to watch them race, and I caught with a handful of the races and saw how wet it was, and wasn't exactly jealous not to be there.
The big talking point probably was the performance of Jason Crump, because that was in effect his comeback meeting, and he certainly didn't disgrace himself, and we saw a few flashes of the Jason Crump of old. So that's going to give him a lot of confidence if he does decide to return again in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, he is a legend of the sport. There's no two ways about it, and he came back incredibly well, and I can't really put too much past him. He is just an incredible rider, and he showed from that he hasn't ridden for 5-6 years, I believe it is, and come back and hardly looked like he missed a beat at all. So, full credit to him. That must be a real tough thing to try and do, especially in, not favourable conditions either.
Before we go any further, it's just to give Webby something to do.
Thanks.
Anybody? How do people listening contact us with any questions or comments or anything?
Okay, so the show's going out on YouTube, Twitter, and of course Facebook. So if you want to participate, just go onto one of the shout boxes and join in there. It's as easy as that. Just like Craig Smee. James, if you had been asked to ride in that British final, would you have ridden it or pulled out like some of the others due to expense and lack of track time?
I probably would have done the meeting. All my bikes were ready to go, and I was fortunate enough to do a little bit of racing. So I may have done it. A lot of it depends on situations. Also, I was in Poland in the long track GP, so I may have chose not to when it was at Bellevue, but I don't know. It's a tough decision. It's one of them things you don't really take lightly. To be asked to ride the British final is a big thing, and to turn it down is just as big deal as saying yes, really.
Craig also says, I personally think it'll be Lambert and Bewley as our two. Then it could be anyone in the under 21 spot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of under 21 riders at the minute. Drew Kemp's going well at the minute. I saw he did well at part of BC's for the Golden River meeting. So, I think out of anyone, you may choose him over over a few of the other riders. But again, there's so many young riders coming through, which is great to see. It's a tough decision to make, but me personally, I probably would have put Drew in on going on this year's track form.
Sean says, hi James, congratulations on your long track results after a very tough year.
Yeah,
just a bit.
That was a bit of an unbelievable one, really. 13 months after my back, I managed to make it back in the GP. So, it's I can't thank the whole team around me. There was days where, Lauren, my partner, literally had to pick me up off the floor because I couldn't, on the floor doing exercise and I couldn't get up again. So that was a literal thing that picked me up and dusted me off. So, yeah, and obviously mum and dad were, behind the scenes doing lots of work, not only trying to prepare me physically, but mentally to come back. And we did it. So that's all I can say.
Yeah.
That's a normal day for you, Chris.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, Michael Harris has decided to join us.
Hello.
It was going so well.
Shall I go? Shall I get my coat?
The same old question. Simon Corbett says, can Speedway survive in the UK? If none, next year? That's going to be a tough year.
Yeah, it is going to be tough. I mean, financially, there's not really going to be many sponsors that are going to want to invest big money into it. But on the flip side, you may get some people may turn around and invest a lot of money in it to get the sport back back in the forefront where it should be. So, I think it's going to turn down to trying to get fans in, making the entry cheaper to try and adapt to the times, which is something I feel Speedway does lack a little bit. It hasn't moved with the times as quickly as it should have. So, be interesting to see. I know there's a few good plans at Birmingham. They're all sort of been put into place with potentially for next year. So
you can't say that and not give us some clues.
I don't think we're going to get any more.
If I stay, I think Lawrence might kill me if I tell you.
Oh, don't worry about him.
I think you can run away from Lawrence at the moment. So.
I'm more worried about the crutch.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mike, got any questions?
Oh yeah, what's happening? Okay.
I'm not going to go through all that again.
No.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've no idea what's been said. So, but obviously, I mean, big congratulations to James for his long track exploits. Yeah, I mean, that must have been. I mean, I heard you talking about the exercise and not being able to get up and all of that. So you've come a long way. You must be so pleased to be back in there next year.
Yeah, it was a very emotional moment. We stood there in the pits and they got the score charts and it flashed up that I was seventh. And I was almost that was it. Completely lost it emotionally. It was such a big moment, as I was told when I first started, it was going to be 18 months before I could even consider riding a bike. They said a year before I could even run. And, I rode, I did a practice day at Rye House about 6 months after surgery. So, yeah, and I think it was 13 months to return to international racing and to qualify for the GP. So, yeah, I haven't really got over it now. It's still quite an emotional story. There's a lot of ups and downs that went through it, and the main things I did it and concentrate on next year now. If there is one.
And I'm claiming a special place for a special place for Birmingham in the World Long Track, because in my head at least Birmingham had 3 riders in the long track. We have Zach and Bomber. Yeah.
And there was Thomas H was in it as well. I know he didn't do a lot of riding with Birmingham, but there was it's great. There was a real sort of team spirit in the pits with the Birmingham riders. The ex-Birmingham riders and the current riders. So yeah, it was good.
And it's good to see Zach performing at a high level after the troubles that he had with us last year.
Yeah, it's the sport. Unfortunately, it is real tough. As many people know, lots of riders suffer with mental issues, with just the pressure you're under for 6 months of the year. It is carnage, really, sometimes. And once you get yourself in that spiral, it's very hard to get out. So, it's great to see Zach perform back at the world stage again. And all credit to him, he rode well in Poland.
He did.
I think a lot of ways. I mean, you look at, as we were talking about Zach there, because when you think back to when he first burst onto the scene in 2015, he was, he sort of took everyone's breath away, really. And I think then there was a huge amount of expectation placed on his shoulders for the following season, and it didn't really happen. And of course, he had his very brief return to Birmingham in 2019, and for a variety of reasons, it just didn't work out. So I think you know, I think we're at a stage where with some of these younger lads that you need to let them try and enjoy their racing more than rather than just, you know, saying, "Oh, you can be world champion" or whatever.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot. A lot of the younger riders are so advertised and so, you know, on the media and all this sort of stuff that I would hate to be some of these riders now with all the pressure that's put on them by like social media and cameras and all this sort of stuff that's always on them. I would hate to be there now. It's, you know, it's hard enough now when you're, you know, in a meeting, you've got a camera in your face at the wrong moment. It's hard enough now, let alone being, you know, 16, living a dream. And unfortunately, things do go wrong. And when you're young, it's quite hard to try and control your emotions. And when everyone's watching you so much, it can become quite difficult. So,
Yeah.
Probably a good example of that for me was Thomas Golub, who for a long time really struggled with the expectation. I mean, of course, you know, at the time, you know, the biggest name in not just in Speedway in Poland, but in Polish sport, you know, highest paid Polish sportsman, a huge amount of expectation on the country that was desperate to have a world champion. And of course, in the end, he did it, but it took him a long time before he was able to finally, you know, scale that height.
Yeah, and that's what worries me a little bit with some of the younger riders, that they've got so much pressure on them such a young age, is whether they make it to the, you know, the senior ranks and they turn around and go, no, I've had enough. I can't deal with it all. So, you know, each their own really. I'd prefer to be, you know, under the shadows for a little bit longer, and, you know, slowly come into the light instead of just being thrown straight into it at a young age. And, you know, it's a sink or swim situation for some of them.
Yeah, you prefer to be a Jason Doyle rather than a Ty Woffindham.
Yeah, in ways, it in my mind, that's a better way to go. You know, you have your problems when you're young, from just lack of experience, finance. You know, there's so many things that come to make a rider, and if all the pressure on you from the very start, you can't really make mistakes. So, you know, it's a simple thing of having a mechanic that doesn't work well with you can, you know, make or break a season. And if that happens at the wrong time, you know, it could be real bad.
And I guess, I mean, I've always felt that, and I forgot what I was going to say now. I've always felt that when it comes too easy at first, you're expecting that all the time. So when the knockbacks do come, it's much more difficult to cope with that.
Yeah, that's something I struggled with this year massively, was coming back with expectations in my head. I know I can perform. You know, I've ranked fourth in the long track. I've won the European a couple of times and all this sort of thing. And I went in with my expectations high. And after the first couple of meetings, I was a wreck. I really wasn't in a good place trying to deal with it. And it took, you know, a lot of talking and a lot of, you know, help from behind the scenes to get me to a stage where, you know, I didn't care, that I had to just go have fun and love riding my bike again. And in turn, it made me ride better. So, yeah.
But having said all of that, you've got to win it next year. You do know that, don't you?
I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
I think the highest I've been was fourth. So, you know, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll give it a go. That's all I can do.
That's
have some fun.
That's what. Yeah, I mean, I think fun is if you're not enjoying it, then sort of, you know, what's the point? I guess. Yeah.
As with everything, I suppose, if you're not enjoying it. You know,
Absolutely. We have any more questions out there, Chris? Hello, everybody. By the way, sorry I'm late.
Yeah, somebody just said, "Who's that bloke there?"
Talking about you, I think so.
And Andy's just said, "Hi, James, a great guy and a great racer." I guess he's talking about you, James. Not
Well, I think that's.
I don't know what James looked at.
Okay, I've got a long post here. I'll try and burst through it. Okay.
Oh gosh, here we go.
On the plus side of Speedway, did you see the announcement from FIM about the GPs from 2022? It did mention the Eurosport package, and it appears that there'll be an umbrella format where all sponsorship and Speedway coverage will be covered across Poland, Sweden, and GP, alongside SON and GP's sporting measures. If that is the case, surely that brings much needed sponsorship money and revenue to British Speedway, especially. Seems a very exciting time for the sport. Hopefully not too late if the sport is hit harder in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Is it too little, too late, or
a lot depends on what happens next year. I mean, you know, hopefully we have a season is the first thing.
yeah,
You know, everybody's desperate to see some speedway, and I think on the back of what James was saying earlier, the best way of looking at next year, should we get speedway, is it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. We did touch on this last week, didn't we?
Yeah. Because
Great
people will,
kickstart,
people will want to be, you know, it will be excited. I remember what it was like when we lost that half a year of speedway under those people who shall not be named, and you know, we only lost half a season when we came back, and we came back in the National League from the Elite League. The buzz around the place and the excitement was just, you know, palpable. You have to look that one up.
Is it a fruit?
Hopefully the BSPA and all the speedway guys take it as an opportunity and move with the times, and don't be afraid to do something different. I know, like, this whole live streaming thing is, you know, can be quite difficult, but it's a great opportunity to really do something different with it, and hopefully, you know, more of that, and try and bring it to different people. I know there's, you know, there's plenty of different podcasts that have started up. There's like Grassroots Banter being one. There's BHB, which is a new one that's just started up, that's trying to get, you know, bikes, petrol heads, car people, everyone that, you know, likes racing into one place, and hopefully we can use that.
I'm bound to say,
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, anything like that, it all helps.
So, just as a sort of show of hands, who actually watched the British final on the live stream?
Saw bits of it.
You saw it, okay?
I saw bits of it yesterday.
Okay. So I watched it live. What did we all think of it?
Well, it was difficult to judge, really, because I mean the conditions weren't
true.
I think I mentioned before that, you know, they probably would have had to have played Waltzing Matilda instead of God's on there. But it was a terrific performance from Rory Schlein, and as me and James were talking a bit before, you know, a real show of rolling back the years from Crumpy, who, you know, produced some magic. It was effectively a comeback mason.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell it was Crump there, couldn't you? I mean, the style and everything was, you know.
Yeah, I really do hope that he does decide, if we do get a season next year, that he does decide to stick with it, because I'm, you know, I mean, okay, he's not gonna reach the levels that he was 2005, 2006, but I think he's still, you know, we saw enough there to show that there's going to be some.
Absolutely.
There's going to be something there for him to work on and be able to be a decent scorer in this in the league next year.
Did any of us predict the winner? Can't remember.
We went for Danny. I went for Danny King.
Yeah, I did as well.
That was, in fairness, that was when it was going to be Sage at Ipswich.
Yeah.
It's Ipswich, yeah.
You're not going to get a prize then.
Would we have got a prize anyway?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a weekend in in Paris.
Okay. 2 weeks quarantine.
Yeah.
You get paid for the trip, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. All expenses paid. What do you think of the GP wildcards and GP series overall?
Well, go on, James. Sorry, mate.
Well, the Speedway. I guess the Speedway one is. I know the reserves list is quite interesting. A couple of young riders in there.
Yeah,
we'll have Lucas, who I know quite well, and Dan Bewley's on it as well. So they're really looking to, you know, push the younger riders into it now, which is great, to try and get, you know, a bit of a turnaround with new young faces and exciting, you know, very exciting riders in it now. So yeah, it looks quite good for next year.
There was a rumour doing the rounds on Saturday night that Nicky Pedersen was going to get recalled back into the series, but obviously that never happened.
No. It's going to be interesting to see how Robert Lambert goes, isn't it? Because, I mean, he's had a stonker of a season in Poland this year. Might be just the right time for him.
Yeah, I think you did the first year, and to go back in, you kind of know what you need. So, I know from the long track one how much work and stuff goes into that, and I can imagine how much more work goes into the Speedway one. So, I hope he's had a great season. So the confidence from that and the knowledge of what it's like to be in that sort of meeting now, put all together, you've got a great package there, really.
I mean, there is a possibility of at parts of the season of having 3 Brits in the because obviously Dan Bewley has also been named as a substitute, which is interesting. And some names that I don't know: Lucas Feinhage.
Yeah, Lucas Finhagen.
Thank you very much.
He won the long track GP this year, and I've ridden with him for years. I met him in Vector when he was about 13, being the English translator. So, know him quite well, and he's an exciting rider. And just some of the names, I did a bit of Googling to see who they were, and they all look very exciting. So, be good.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it does look. I have to say that Bartosz Marzlik looks wow.
I mean, I've heard some people saying, "Well, is it because the 6 of the 8 rounds were in Poland?" I'm not convinced that was completely down to there. I mean, it would have been a help, obviously, but
but he did it last year as well. So
I mean, Prague's not been a particularly good hunting ground for Smarslik over the years, but he won both those meetings. So, and
I think the whole Polish track advantage thing's out the window this year, where they're all riding in Poland.
That's true.
Non-stop now, so there's no real home, like Polish track advantage at all now. So yeah, you can't take it away from it.
Setting himself up now in the pecking order, isn't he, Bartos? Really, back-to-back World Championships. I think only 9 others have done it. So
yeah. I mean that. I mean, Ty famously said he wanted to do it, but wasn't able to. Do you think those two are going to be, for the next 3 or 4 years, those are going to be the 2 main I can't even say it, protagonists? I need another coffee.
Is that another fruit?
Ty's an interesting one, to be honest, because he hasn't managed to win a Grand Prix this season, although he's been
close,
very, very consistent. Obviously, last year was a complete write-off for him. He started slowly and then had that injury, which pretty much derailed his whole season. I don't think there's any doubt that he's got the quality to win another World Championship. The other question and query, of course, is whether he's got the hunger. But I think Ty's still got that desire to go on and win more World Championships. I mean, he's 30 now, so he's got maybe another 4-5 years at the very pinnacle. I know people are going to say Greg Hancock, but I think Greg was probably a bit of a one-off, to be honest. But
a freak, I think, is the word you was looking for.
Oh, steady. Oh, COVID.
No, coffee.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Duncan Pemberton just said, "Evening, people. Evening, where you been, Dunk?" Sean Simo says, "James, long track or speedway, we enjoy both grass and speedway, but people keep telling us to sell grass track and get better speedway equipment. But with the grass, you can relax more, as it's only about yourself with less pressure." I thought it said pleasure in the end, but it's pressure. Pressure.
That is true. Grass track is so much more chilled out. I mean, you go to, definitely in England, you turn up, Saturday evening, you set up, you chill out, you relax, you ride, you have a bit of a nap and you ride. I mean, the European stuff's a little bit more, like being at work, but it's still so much laid back. And if you have a bad day, it's only you that have a bad day. Where Speedway, you have a bad day. You've had a bad day. The team's had a bad day. The fans then sometimes get on your back, and managers. It can get quite daunting, but yeah, I mean, investing money in bikes, it's just being clever. I mean, you haven't got to have the prettiest looking bikes. If you've got a quick engine and engine, clutch, and carb, that's all you need. I don't care if you've had 5-year-old covers. I mean, I won my first Masters on the bike I had in the intermediates, which was about 6 years old, I think it was. Handmade covers by my mum,
Oh, really?
and I was with a 10-year-old van.
Yeah.
So you know, it.
It's
You
the
don't
skill
need
of the
to have
rider,
best
then, isn't
looking
it?
kit.
It's definitely the skill of the rider.
Yeah, and it's been clever, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
you haven't got, you don't need a new suit every year. I'd rather have a, new carburetor or invest into everything that and get your mindset right to do it all, than look pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Matt agrees with you because it never looks pretty.
Matt don't look pretty.
Exactly, that's my whole point. Thank you for making my whole point there.
James, apart from the Isle of Wight, what is your favourite track to race on in the UK?
Careful.
Is Lawrence listening?
You're gonna upset
Usually
somebody.
is.
You're going to upset somebody. So.
I have to say Birmingham is one of my favourite tracks. It's a proper race track.
Well done.
Then Peterborough. I enjoy Peterborough.
Oh, great track, yeah.
I quite enjoy riding Ipswich. That's
That's interesting because, I mean, the Peterborough and Ipswich are like chalk and cheese.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Ipswich. I've been to Peterborough when it's been real grippy, and I've been there when it's been real slick. But it just allows, as a racer, it just allows racing. You can really pick different lines and you can work the track. So, yeah, if it's a racetrack, I'm up for it.
Just get to the end of the corner and turn left.
Yeah. I tried turning right a couple of times. It didn't end correct.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Craig comes back on regarding Greg Hancock. He says, I think Greg Hancock's longevity was down to him being lucky with not having bad injuries, as well as being a consistent world-class performer.
Yeah.
Probably I would agree with that, to be honest. You
just called him a freak.
No, that was me.
Oh, right. Okay.
I stand by it.
Yeah, I've seen. I think we've talked about this before. I think when him and Billy Hamilton first came over to the UK, I think Bruce Pannell famously said that Billy would win the World Championship first, but Greg would last longer. I don't think he probably meant he would last as long as he did, but I think with Billy and also with Sam Ermolenko, they had more ability than Greg Hancock, but I think in both cases they had quite, particularly Sam, obviously had bad injuries that sort of meant that their time at the top was a bit limited. Greg was pretty fortunate in that sense. Probably say the same thing about Hans Nielsen as well. I mean, he very, very rarely seemed to ever pick up any injuries.
Mm.
And the good thing about Greg, he's such a down to earth guy. I met him a couple of times, and you wouldn't think he was who he was. He was just so down to earth, willing to help anyone with any bit of advice. I mean, we was at Glasgow, and he came out on the track with me, do a couple of second halves and gave me advice. Didn't ask for it. He just said to me, right, we're going out at the end of the meeting. I'm going to give you some help, just straight off the blue. So, there's not many people like that. And he was definitely a, one of a kind bloke.
Nicky Pedersen had asked him, he might have thought twice, but...
Yeah, I remember that. So anyway, I think it's only fair to come back to James and ask him a little bit more about his long track, because since we've got you on the show, I would like to know, because I have never been and seen a long track meeting. I've actually looked at quite a few on YouTube today while I was sitting waiting for my dad in the hospital. So I've seen a few of your races today, actually. What would you say is the greatest? I mean, obviously it's long track, so it's a bigger track. But what's the biggest differences? How approach and so on.
You run on a lot of different surfaces. That's probably one of the more challenging things. You go from your 1,000-meter shell tracks, sand tracks, grass, clay. You can ride varying different surfaces, different conditions, and obviously the tracks do vary quite a lot in length. In Europe, you go for everything from Moldorf, which is a true 1,000-meter track, to I think it's Forza in Finland, which is 1,200-meter lap, and then you get the slightly smaller ones, which are 500-600 meters. So it really challenges a rider with different conditions and surfaces and things. And you can tell who's a better sand track rider to a shell rider with just looking at the results. They change quite a lot.
And they're not always level, are they? The tracks either. They're not. Like, you can get different inclines as well. I know this because
Yeah.
I've actually been to one.
Have you been to one?
I have.
No.
No.
Black riding is
Shame you haven't been to any Speedway meetings.
No,
Anyway.
sure, who has?
I mean, in England, you get, they are quite often like on side of hills and things like that. Europe, they're more purpose-built places, but you still get them. They're on the slightly side of a hill, or you get an ambass camber that comes back, or there's you go to some tracks and there's so many tricks to them. Osnabrück's one of them. It's a track in Germany where you got the first corner's downhill into the corner, and then you have a bank, like a proper banking coming out the corner. Then you go up a hill, and the top corner is like a big corner going in, and then it turns to Eastbourne, right in the middle of the corner. So, it's sort of 60 odd miles an hour. You're trying to, back a bike in it at 60 mile an hour, which is sometimes quite interesting.
Yeah. I imagine that's the other thing, I suppose, is the speeds must be higher given that the length of the tracks.
Yeah, I mean, Speedway you sort of may hit 60 on some of the bigger tracks. On grass track, 60 is sort of an average speed. I might have been clocked at just over 100 miles an hour at Muldorf, I think it was, at the end of the straight. So, it's scary. First time you sort of, you take yourself down and you sort of get the sense of speed.
Yeah.
The first time it's scary, but once you've done it a few times, it's second nature. So,
Right.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
In a normal world, I mean, how we long for a normal world again. I mean, what sort of crowds does the long track get, James? Because back in the 70s and 80s, it was a lot bigger than, or perceived to be a lot bigger than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, you get some of the real big meetings like Herxheim, which is always ran on German Father's Day, which is a day off. When we had the GP round there a couple of years ago, there was 40,000 people there, all absolutely drunk out their faces, party atmosphere all day. And the same with sort of like Marmont and some of these bigger meetings where they're on like holidays, like Father's Day, Bastille Day, and things like this. They're ran more like parties, so everyone turns up for the party and racing.
It's more an occasion.
Yeah, and a lot of the clubs will run one meeting a year, so they put everything into that one meeting. And so the crowds are bigger. They're not as big as they used to be, but they definitely are bigger than what they are over here.
And that's what we've said in the past, isn't it, really? That's one thing the British Speedway misses is it's big day out. I mean, obviously you've got card. But...
I think when you're running every week, you can't start doing, having a big party every week. But there's definitely things that can be done. I know Birmingham do the centre green stuff. You can go in for the centre green experience. You can, play football in the intervals, and I know Isle of Wight were very big at doing that as well. So, it's moving with the times and trying something different to appeal to the younger people now. Where a lot of the fans are on the older side. You need to get the 10-year-olds into the sport now, so they can stay for a few years.
I've always felt that one of the things that Speedway is well placed to use, but never has it is, so instead of having a program, if you have an app on your phone and it all comes down on your app, and so the winner of the race, and there's a picture of the winner of the race, or maybe even a little video of the winner, saying, all of that, and would that sort of thing would entice the iPad generation,
But there's still a generation that do like the touchy-feely of a program.
But you don't. Well,
I know it's strange, but they do.
You don't need. You're talking about yourself.
I am actually. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You don't need to lose the one to use the other. You just don't. Both can be.
I think a lot of it is trying to entice younger people to sport. So whether that's the app, that has a pretty good idea to make it more user friendly, having like a breakdown of what the sport is, so anyone that can go there can watch it and
try and understand it.
Look at the rules and go, oh, this is why that's happened. Why are they wearing that helmet color, not that one, and all this sort of thing. So there's definitely room for improvement, and that app idea is a good idea. So
Yay! You're going to pinch it. You're going to go back to Lawrence and pinch it now, aren't you?
He's allowed one good year, one good idea every year.
I'll be on the phone in a minute.
We may have a new Hancock looking at the Speedway scene soon. Wilbur's looking for a club in the UK and some clubs in Europe for 2021.
Who was that again? Sorry.
Wilbur Hancock.
Okay. Yeah, but who was this other?
Oh, Craigsby said that.
Okay.
Yeah. It'd be good to see, a Hancock back over us. So
yeah.
Definitely.
That's it. I mean, we've got the two Americans, of course, riding over here now in Brock Nickel and Luke Becker, of course, who made such a big impact at Wolves last year. So it would be nice to start seeing, a bit of a resurgence on the from the US. I mean, me and Mark have both obviously talked in the past about some of the England USA Test matches that we had back in the day, which were fantastic to watch, and great to be part of. It would be nice to have that again, at some point, and hopefully this is a bit of a resurgence from America.
What's Speedway like now in the USA? Is it still sort of,
it's still going, but I think it's there's not that many tracks at the moment, is there?
A lot of them are they're known for being very small technical tracks, aren't they?
Yeah.
I know there's one that's in an industrial unit, I think.
right.
It's
yeah, that's I can't remember now, but I do know that it begins with a C. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I've watched a few videos from around there. That look interesting.
I think the problem is they're about the same size as Chris's studio. So it's sort of. Some of the Polish riders go over there. I think their eyes pop out when they walk through this race.
I bet they're warmer than Chris's studio.
I'm telling you, it's freezing. It's absolutely freezing.
Carrots on there.
Simon says, I saw the late Simon win in Denmark and Eric win in Germany. Was massive then with Muller, Riss, and it's just moved there, and Hack.
Simon Wigg in particular was a fantastic rider on the long track. I think five world championships he won, I think. So
I think he was.
Could have done more in Speedway really as well, to be honest. But I think he was more focused really on the long track side. I do think that Simon Wigg would have been a fantastic ambassador and could have done a really good job as a speeder from that. But of course, tragedy, and it's hard to believe it's nearly 20 years since we lost him. So
yeah, I mean, it'd been amazing how the sport would have been different with him still around. So I mean, he was an absolute legend. You can't knock him for anything. So
Costa Mesa.
No, I don't think that's the one that James is talking about. I think it's called Construction, actually.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, but
the main one over there was Long Beach, wasn't it? Because that's they had a lot of the American championships there. And I think they had a couple of World Team Cup finals there as well, didn't they? So.
Right. Well, we've got 15 minutes left, gents, and we haven't really spoke about the GPs. And importantly, excuse me, we haven't spoke about the Speedway of Nations coming up.
Yeah.
Which
Bellevue now, but
yeah, that's Lublin, isn't it? If I remember right.
Yeah. And
the possibility exists that Ty Woffenden won't be able to ride.
Yeah, of course, we should send our best wishes to him, shouldn't we? Because he had a knock at the weekend. So
he's had an operation, and
I think he's got 2 pins in his hand now. So
in his 5th metatarsal. Yeah. There you go. And he's not riding again for his team. They've already said that's the end of his season for them. But nothing's been said yet about the Speedway of Nations. But should he not be able to ride, who do we pick in place of him?
Difficult, isn't it? I definitely, Robert Lambert definitely is one of them.
Of course.
Dan Bewley is starting to score quite well as well now. So, there's him. There's him as well. So
he's got to be the under 21, hasn't he? Really?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where England are quite lucky in that aspect. They've got quite a good under 21 pool. So you can have, like a couple of years ago where Robert was our under 21 rider.
Yeah.
He had so much experience and was such a good rider for that age. It was great. So
It's such a shame, isn't it? Because with Ty Woffington, Robert Lambert, and Dan Bewley, that is the lineup. You've got to think there's a chance there, haven't you?
I mean, 2 years ago we came Martin Austin, didn't we? So
Excuse me for 2
Yeah, it'd be
minutes.
interesting.
Oh, he's disappeared.
Coming back.
Okay.
I mean, Court Shaw's
That's a
again.
shame.
Yeah, definitely be interested to see what they do about who they pick. So
Is Rory Schlein able to ride for us? I mean, he's the
Yeah.
British champion. I mean, that would seem to be, and he's ridden in Poland, of course.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's down to what passport you hold. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he's a British citizen now. So
So
Yeah.
it should be available, shouldn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Some cynics out there, not me.
Because he was born in Bristol, wasn't he? So
Yeah, but some cynics out there. I'm not one of them. I wouldn't say this, but I can just imagine on the social media that they'd be saying, "Oh, we're replacing one Australian with another," but I'm not saying that.
technically speaking, Jason Crump could, if it is on like passport, Jason Crump could ride as well. So
Because he has got a dual passport, hasn't he?
yeah, I don't quote me on that. I'm not sure how they decide whether you're, what nation you ride for, but yeah,
He certainly wouldn't be able to ride as the under 21.
I don't know, might scrape under. I don't know.
Yeah. So
Brian's just said Speedway of Nations, couldn't they come up with a better name than this?
well, presumably, if they could, they would have. It sort of answers itself.
I think they changed it to fall in line with all the other like motocross. There's all like the motocross of nations and stuff like that. I think
Right.
the FAM changed them to made them all the same because the long track is changed to long track of nations as well now. So
Right.
I think he's just trying to make it like a standard thing, probably.
Yeah. Jason Crump's got a dual nationality, says Duncan.
Okay, so that's a possibility. But I think probably Rory Schlein would probably be the better pick than Crumpy at the moment.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And also, I mean, the other thing about who you choose is there are lots of British riders that are going to be very rusty.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
big.
whereas I think Rory, he's had that experience of winning the British Championship, so he's sort of up to speed a little bit.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else really. I mean, some people have mentioned Bomber, and
well, I mean, Bomber riding it last year, didn't he? And took some absolutely horrific abuse on social media for his performance. Which was
so I don't think he would want to do it again after that.
Yeah, I mean, he's not exactly like rusty. He's done a few meetings. I think a lot of the problem is do you put someone in that's not only done one meeting or not ridden, or do you charge someone that's had more racing this year? So yeah, I'm glad I'm not making the decision.
Yeah. I mean, we have to say let's hope that Ty is going to be in it. I mean, nothing's been said there he's not.
It's not looking hopeful, and he might get the chance to, knock it on the head for the year and get fit, because I believe it's his left hand.
It's his clutch hand, yeah.
So that's quite, surprisingly, that hand does go through a lot of stress. So interesting.
I gotta say, shame for Duncan. I saw his post earlier regarding going to Poland. Well, not going to Poland, just missing out and having lost all that money due to the fact that he couldn't go and then quarantine on his way back.
Yeah.
And he says, due to quarantine, guess who had front row seats for the Speedway of Nations at Bellevue? I am cursed, he says.
Can he just let us know what other tickets he buys for next year,
Yes,
so we can avoid those ones? Yeah.
Can't we see if way back in time Smarshlick ain't got an English relative?
He did ride for Birmingham for one meeting, didn't he?
I think it was 2 meetings officially, or one of the meetings was rained off halfway through. But yeah. Yeah.
Poland or Russia will win, said Simon.
Yeah, I fancy Russia, to be honest.
Yeah.
I got a bet on Russia.
Mm-hmm.
usual suspects, isn't it? So
It is, yeah. I mean, but you would with Ty and with Robert Lambert, you've got to give us an outside chance, haven't you, Bert? You need both.
I think if he'd have been at Bellevue, then I think you'd have really had a good fancy our chances, to be honest. But obviously losing the home track advantage isn't a great thing, to be honest. But
yeah, it is what it is. It's
you stuffed, Mike. Duncan says he's getting some Birmingham Speedway tickets.
What's that? That doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
let's talk about Bartosz Smarzlik for a bit. I mean, 2 World Championships, 25 years of age. Talk already of the milestones currently held by Messrs. Major and Rickardsson on 6. I think Smarzlik was younger at 25 than those two when they won their World Championships. I mean, he's obviously the benchmark at the moment. I mean, can he go for something like that?
I think he can. No, stay injury free. He's had a couple of nasty accidents this year. So, his whole staying injury free is a big thing. And if you can do that, you increase your chances of winning more titles quite massively. So,
I think
he can definitely win a few more, I think.
He's certainly got the talent to do it. I mean, Ty Woffington's been the sort of the rider over the past few years, really. Its injuries held him back a couple of seasons and so on. But there's a couple of times, I think even in the last meeting, where Ty Woffington has gated in front of Smarzlik, and there's been one hell of a ding-dong between the two of them, but Smarzlik has always come out on top.
Smarzlik's a very clever rider in that sense, isn't he? Because he doesn't take unnecessary risks. He's very patient on the track, and he waits for his chance. So I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he could go on and win multiple championships. Obviously the next few years you're going to see some other rivals coming into the fray. I mean, Max Frick, of course, winning his first Grand Prix.
Has he got British ancestors? Who's desperate?
Probably.
Well, they are our cousins, aren't they, Australia? So
Yeah.
I think if you've been to the toilet or bought a pie, I think that qualifies you.
Fair enough.
Craig says, has Ty 100% been ruled out? I see his hand was in plaster and pinned, but he's had trouble with that hand all season and still rode through the pain barrier. Wouldn't put it past him.
He hasn't said anything. But however, I mean, I read his last tweet, and the official response to this tweet was he hasn't actually ruled himself out.
Yeah.
But the first thing that he said in this tweet was, "That's a wrap."
All right, okay.
Maybe that sounds.
Maybe he's wrapping his arm.
And then he went on talking about he'd had it pinned and so on. But
or maybe he bought a kebab and somebody says, "No, that's a wrap." You don't know, do you?
Remind me why you're here again, Chris.
I ain't got a clue.
Join the rest of us.
Simon said, I don't think so. Being the rider, he is liable to get injured.
Yeah.
I presume they're talking about Bartok there.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
So I don't. I've heard this before. I've heard people say he takes unnecessary chances, but I don't see that.
No, I don't think he does.
Yeah,
He takes. He's not afraid to go where no one else goes. I mean, he has a habit with his right foot, and it caught him out. I want to say last. I saw on YouTube. I can't remember what meeting it was, but he likes waving his right foot around. That caught him out. Once or twice. So yeah, it's one of the things you can never tell you're going to get injured, and you never know when it's going to happen. So it could be the smallest little slip off can cause a lot of damage, and yet you can have the biggest smash up in the world, get up and walk away from it unscathed. So a lot of it's lady luck.
Absolutely. We should also talk about a certain Mr. Jamin Lidsley.
Yes.
Yeah, the new under-21 world champion, who's also obviously got. He's one of the substitutes, isn't he, for the GPs next year?
Yeah, he's made a lot of really good progress, hasn't he? I mean,
hasn't he just?
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty much unknown when he first came over to the UK. I think last year off of Bellevue, and immediately made a huge impact. So,
well, you say he was on 9, but that before he came over, he very nearly won the Australian Championship. He was very close to winning it. So, I when I saw him, I thought, I wonder if we could sign him. But Bellevue getting there. Yeah, I mean, he looks the real deal, doesn't he?
Certainly does, and they do go through these phases, don't they? The Australia, where they start bringing through some really, really good young riders, and it looks like they've got another load coming off the conveyor belt again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the big one at the moment, really, for me, is Denmark, because a few years ago they had some really, really good prospects coming through, but it's sort of dried up a little bit now.
Just seem to have.
I mean, Michael Jepsen Jensen, I think he was, when he first started, I looked at him as a potential future world champion. Hasn't really kicked on from that, to be honest.
I think a lot of countries go through phases, don't they? They'll get, one country will have a load of riders at one stage, and another country dries out, and then, the following couple of years later, another country gets more riders. So I think a lot of it depends on, if you have a young crop of riders start or a big crop of young riders start, you get it. But if you don't, you kind of like later on a couple of years down the line, they sort of fizzle out, and then you run out, don't you?
I mean, we do seem to be producing quite a few decent riders at the moment in this country.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this year off hasn't altered their prospects. But I mean, I was talking to Anders Rowe a couple of weeks back, and obviously he's busy in Poland and enjoying that experience. He's a rider that's got potential.
I think the fast track system really should take a lot of credit for this. I think a few years ago, because it pushed some riders to having a few meetings in the top league, and I think it sort of gave them the confidence to think, well, maybe I can push for the top league and do well in that. And quite a few of those riders now are among the big boys in the top flight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe they should bring it back. Maybe they will bring it back. Who knows?
Just going back to Ty, Dunk says, get Rory in for Ty, one Aussie for another.
I told you.
I didn't know Scunthorpe was in Australia.
Have we seen riders strap broken hands or broken legs to the bikes in the past and rode on?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think there is a rule now. There's a thing in FIM rules that technically you can't ride with broken bones.
Didn't Pacey Collins ride in the world final with a broken leg?
Yeah, didn't you have like a bit of like rubber or like a bungee cord on his?
Yeah. Still
going
finish
to
I always think the best story on that one was the Chris Morton story. Do you know about that? He was in some sort of qualification for the World Championship, had to finish in top 6 to get to the next round, and he came off, and quite a nasty accident, and he woke up in the medical tent at the track, and they said, asked him if he was okay. He'd been unconscious.
Yeah.
Asked him if he was okay. Asked this and that, and said, is your neck okay? And he said, yeah, it's fine. Didn't tell them that his neck had swollen up to the size of a balloon and he couldn't actually turn his head. So anyway, he qualified. 4 or 5 years later, he was involved in another accident, and they sent him to the hospital. And as a precaution, they took an X-ray of his neck, and the doctor said, "Oh, by the way, when did you break your neck?"
Don't make it like that anymore.
No.
No. I mean, there's so many rules around it now. It's crazy. We're like all concussion rules, and you have to be signed fit by a doctor, and there's so many rules that sort of stop you doing this. I mean, I've ridden with, I rode a GP round with a broken foot. I had it strapped up to the gunnel, so it didn't cause me any bother. So I've done it with a broken fingers and all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think you actually could now. I think they'll stop you. If you turned up with a bit of bungee holding your foot up, I think they might have a bit of a hissy fit now.
Yeah, I'm okay to ride. Can you hold my leg a minute?
I'm actually being held up now by something.
Yeah. Probably alcohol if I know you, but
Yeah. Oh, it's 9 o'clock.
good God, so it is.
What are
Wow.
you doing?
Well, thank you again, James, for joining
That's
us. It's been a pleasure, as always. Should let our listener out there know that we're probably doing one more
Yeah, we're
show,
probably going to do a show before.
which is going to be after the Speedway of Nations, so that we can talk about that. And then obviously after that, if any news becomes apparent about what may or may not happen next year, we will probably do a show about that.
Yeah. Okay.
But there we go. Thanks once again, James. Really appreciate it, mate.
Anytime, guys. See you soon.
You take care.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone, and
Good
stay
night,
safe.
Stay safe.
Good night, a bit.
Bye.